So, fished for about 5 minutes, caught a good largemouth here on a hard jerkbait, thinking I was recording, and I didn't hear my camera beep to change the battery. So, the first fish catch is out there in the consciousness of all bass fishermen and not on video. If that makes sense to you. So, retie, got a glass perch on, a husky jerk, 2-hook version. I like it better in the cold water. Don't need the big 10s or 11s or anything like that. £12-pound fluorocarbon, 6.5 foot, medium heavy power, fast action rod, but it's a soft fast action, so I'm comfortable throwing a treble hook bait on it. Tying a 3-turn Miller knot. It's a fast and very strong knot for fluorocarbon. Use quality line and tie good knots. You'll land more fish. So this is my, essentially, what I'm hoping to be the first video that I actually post to my new YouTube channel called Tinman's Bass Fishing, with the help of my father-in-law, who's been my engineer for this. We're going to link it up with my blog for a more detailed account of what I do on the water, video-wise, and we're hoping to grow it. But our aim is, and I explained this on the 15-minute car ride here, truck ride, what that was, and my camera was dead. So, the point of my videos are going to be obviously to entertain, but to educate and remind people of stuff they may have already heard, but namely your bank fishermen for ponds and small lakes or big lakes, and then your small craft fishermen. You know, not everybody has an $80,000 bass boat and $8 grand in electronics and all that fancy stuff, so we're going to tailor that to bank fishermen, small craft fishermen, and what we're going to teach is essentially locational aspects of bass fishing. It gets lost in the account of all the beautiful tackle and fancy stuff out on the market. Nice rods and reels are great and all that, baits, but the most important thing to understand and know how to apply are the seasonal patterns, / calendar periods. Those are interchangeable names, so to speak, and then you're going to use the local conditions along with the seasonal pattern that's currently happening in your region of the country on the given body of water that you're on, and then fine-tune it to catch as many fish and the biggest fish that you can. So you've got your body of water you're on, man-made lake, a reservoir, a natural lake, your river systems, and then your tidal fisheries. Those are your 4 different types of bodies of water in this country, with your man-made reservoirs and natural lakes definitely being the 2 most popular, followed by your river systems, and then your tidal systems as well. So you base what you're going to do seasonally off the body of water you're going to be on, and understanding that a pond is just a small lake and a lake is just a big pond. That's important to understand. Creeks are small rivers, vice versa. Understanding the attributes of each is important. What the keys are structurally and cover-wise in a natural lake, in a reservoir, in a river, in a tidal system, those are going to figure heavily into your seasonal pattern portion, which is the most important portion of the locating bass equation. It's huge. And then your prevailing conditions, the past few days before you fish, and then the current conditions, and then fine-tuning from there, like I said, to catch as many fish and the biggest fish you can. So we're on a pond, which is just a small lake. Water's in the mid-40s. It's clear. The fish have not come to the bank, but they've moved vertically in the water column. And when you get clear water, cold water, a hard jerkbait is day in and day out the best bait you can use. I keep a grub and an underspin handy. I throw those both on the same spinning rod, and then I keep a finesse jig handy. And when the water gets, into the solid upper 40s, I will mix a lipless crankbait in, especially if I have grass and rocks. It can be a dynamite way to catch them and catch a lot of good ones. So I don't keep it. I keep it simple and I don't make it very complicated. So my first thing is I understand I'm in northern Illinois. I know what early March is like. It could snow and it can be 70. So keep that in mind. But on average, fishing 40-degree water temps. So the fish are not going to be on the banks, typically. They're going to be out deeper on the grass edges or whatever structure is available if there's no grass in terms of structure and cover. So I know that. So I want to be able to cast off the bank. Fish in clear water tend to suspend, especially when it's sunny, because they want to soak up that upper layer of warm water. Look at the size of that snapping turtle. Wow. So I want a bait that I can fish in the upper portion of the water column and that suspends, and that's a hard jerk bait. You definitely don't want your bait to rise in the water. You want it to suspend or sink very slowly. So that's going to be my number one clear water bait, whether it's a pond, a lake, a river, whatever. And then that's followed closely by a grub on a jig head or an underspin of some sort that I can steadily reel through the water column and occasionally drop and lift it back up and get it going again. So I'm covering the entire water column, and then my finesse jig, which will be on the bottom, whether they eat it on the fall or when it's just sitting there. You'll figure that out. They'll tell you pretty quick. Those are really the only baits you need. Pond, lake, river, reservoir, doesn't matter. Those are my 3 key baits with the occasional lipless crankbait mixed in. Stained water can be a totally different deal. I'm looking at water that tends to be warmer because it absorbs the sunlight. So I'm looking at baits like flat-sided crankbaits, dragging jigs around, and that's really about it until you get into the upper 40s, low 50s, when your spinner baits, chatter baits, square bills get really good. And then obviously if you're shallow and you've got targets, pitching a jig to is dynamite. So those are the 2 water clarities I'm going to fish in the spring. Clear and stained. I'm staying away from muddy water in the 40s. When you get into the 50s, it can be good, but it is like the kiss of death when it's in the 40s. There's a fish. Yeah, buddy. That fish was on the flat with the wind blowing in here, though. Leave them a little bit of line. Tire them out. You don't want to swing these fish onto the bank with a bunch of trebles when they're still nutty. So it's a little fish. He was up on the flat on the inside of the grass line. So that tells me that traditionally or typically that means your bigger fish are going to be deeper than your small fish. They're going to be deeper. Whether they're suspended over deeper water on the bottom, you'll have to figure out. So chances are, when I catch a big one, it's going to be probably over that 7 to 10 feet of water range, foot of water range. But that fish tells me something, so be mindful of that. in about 2 or 3 weeks here, I'm going to be clobbering these fish on a lipless crankbait. I'll keep the jerkbait rig, no doubt, but I will be clobbering them on a lipless crankbait, spinnerbait, if it gets really windy. Well, there's another nip. Could be a bluegill. So this is a very, very select area that I'm fishing. It's an inside turn in the grass line. They're going to winter out there off the grass line, and then they'll suspend up in the water column to get shallower in the water column and not necessarily swim horizontally to the bank. They will, once we get into the solid upper 40s, low 50s, they will start to come to the bank. But for now I'm going to fish deeper, but fish up in this clearer water. And that's another reason why your baits are limited. So this is your northwest corners tend to be the best because the sun is in the southern hemisphere and it shines onto the northern banks more than it does the south. So your northwest corners tend to be best, and if you've got a spawning flat in there, dynamite. So keep that in mind. And then you want to find the steepest drops close to that flat that you can. So that's your structural element, the drop, the change in depth, and then you want to find some cover on it. In this case, it's a drop from 4 or 5 feet down to about 10, and I've got grass on it, and it's Cara grass, which is a very rigid and crisp grass. Water tends to be very clear when it has it in it, and the bass love it. So I'm targeting the edge of the grass just before I get over it where those fish are holding. And that's where those big ones are really going to be. Those little ones will scatter out a little more. They'll come a little bit shallower. The big ones are going to be in the primo spots. So I'm going to work the bait relatively quick. I'm not going to pause it for 5 to 10 seconds really, unless I absolutely have to. If I can pause it for 2 or 3 seconds like that, a good bit. Look at that. That was in a foot of water. I'm going to do that. So for camera purposes, I want you to see this. So I'm holding the rod out like a goof. Like I said on the previous catch, let them tire themselves out. You don't want to bring in a fish that's even in 46 degree water that's running hot and put a treble hook in your hand and end up in the ER. Take your time. Ooh, this fish has been caught before. Catch and release. When they get that front hook in the top of their lip like that, they're eating it really well. They're eating it head first. Not quite a pound. Small male. And that'll happen. You'll get your smaller fish that'll come up on the flats sooner. They're not as picky as your big fish. So we get a good bite, it's probably going to be out deeper. Check your knot after a fish or two. So being that was on the flat and I was moving the bait kind of quick, I'm going to try and cast out farther and pause it a little bit longer. Oh, something hit it. So I'm using my rod and line to give the bait action. You want slight amount of slack in your line when it's really cold to work a jerkbait. And in the summer or when the water's warmer, you want a little bit more slack in it than you would when it's cold. And that slack is going to allow that bait to really slash side to side and going to be a more aggressive action, which is good when it's warm. So keep that in mind. So I'm using the rod to move just a small amount of slack so I can move the bait slowly with not a whole lot of action, and I'm keeping it in the strike zone. And then obviously as the water warms, more aggressive rod movements, more slack in the line, and faster rod movements, so you're not pausing it very long when the water gets warm. You know, somewhere in that 3 to 5 seconds when the water's really cold, and once you're above 60, I hardly pause the bait. So this inside turn goes like this, and it's a big flat close to me, and out beyond that is deep water where they winter. So I'm targeting that transition area, that edge, and with the sun out, it's really going to put them on that edge, tighter to the cover, which actually makes this bite better because they tend to be in more specific locations. But if it was cloudy, they'll roam a little bit more, and the jerkbait bite tends not to be as good. And not because they won't eat it, but because they scatter more. I can make presentation after, there's a good one, presentation after presentation in the same area, and I know those fish are grouped up. There's a better fish. That's a 1.5 pounder. Chunk. Out there eating bluegills and minnows. Just keep tension on them. I like the way this is going. Want 3 or 4 fish in 15 minutes. So when they've got a mouthful of hooks like that, grab them tightly, right behind their gills, not right on their gills. You don't want to crush them. Lay your rod down and release them. Try not to handle the bass on their scale areas very much. Try and grab them by the mouth and hold them vertically. You don't want to take their protective slime off, and you don't want to hold the bass horizontally or parallel to the ground just from their mouth. You break their jaw. So be mindful of that, especially your big females. Got to take care of the fat mamas. That wasn't politically correct. So that's 3 fish on 12-pound fluoro. I am going to retie. When it's windy like this, keep your back to the wind when you tie. It's much easier. Slide your fingers up the line. Typically, you know, the 3 or 4 inches closest to the bait is what gets torn up. Any knot you tie where you double the line through the eye, they tend to test stronger than just one time through the eye. So be mindful of that. Tie a knot that works well for you. If you can tie a decent knot well, it's better than tying a crappy knot, or a great knot crappy. And I leave, I don't know, 1/4 inch, maybe a little less of tag end. And when I catch a bunch of fish, I check my hooks. The jerkbait bite's really good in the spring. I change my hooks out sometimes during the day as I'm fishing, just because you will dull them up a little bit. So all those fish have been relatively shallow. Right on top of the grass or on the inside edge of the grass. There's another one. Oh yeah. Yep, shallow. Boy, I may be able to throw a lipless crankbait if they're going to do this. Just another pounder. Not as fat as the last one. Just got the back hook. Be careful of that. When they just have one little hook like that, you've got the line tight close to you. Try and keep the line angled away from you to the side. Don't pull it straight up towards you, because if they throw the bait, it's like a slingshot right back at you. That's why it's so important to wear sunglasses. Obviously you can see into the water better, especially clear water, but I don't want to lose my vision for any bass out there, so I don't skimp on sunglasses. I will spend $300 on a pair of sunglasses. A pair of blue lenses for when it's sunny, and a pair of amber lenses for when it's cloudy. And they work great. Costa Del Mar, baby. Maui Jim makes some good stuff, but I don't like their frames for fishing. They're more of a style frame. So I've got my rod tip kind of angled up because these fish are shallower, so I'm trying to keep it above the grass. And I don't want it digging down. So I'll work it down on the first couple of snaps, and then it's kind of up and I guess parallel to the ground at shoulder height. And I'm just keeping my cadence simple. It's a 1, sit, 1, 2, sit, 1, and just alternating between that. And I'm using the wind to my advantage. I'm casting perpendicular into it, so it keeps my line with just enough slack in it, and I don't have to worry about backlashes. So think about that when you're on the water. Think about your angle, obviously in presenting the bait to the edge of grass like I am here, or whatever you're fishing, the specific area. Be mindful of that. It's very important, but you don't want to give yourself bunch of backlashes either on casting tackle. That sucks when it's cold and you're standing there picking out a backlash. If you have to pick one out, whatever you do, don't start yanking. Put your thumb on the spool and turn your reel handle until the line is snug, and then hit your clutch, release the spool, and start pulling out the biggest loops that you can find, and gently pull them out one at a time until you pick it all out, and you will get it out every time. It also helps to condition your line each time you fish. The night before I go out, especially on the boat, I'll spray all my line down with some Real Magic. I do like KVD's line conditioner too. It's good stuff. And then occasionally I'll spray my guides as well. Just be mindful not to get it all over your reel, because Real Magic, the line conditioner, it's hydrophobic, it sheds water. So if you get it into your reel, it'll mess with your grease and oil, and you don't want it to mess up your bearings and your gears. You want them to stay oiled and greased. So use it sparingly. Same thing with water. If your reels get soaked, if you want to take care of your stuff and make it last longer, take them apart when you get home and dry them out and put them back together. If you don't care, you'll be buying stuff in short order. You know, and I spend $100, $150 or so on a rod and reel. And I've got well over a dozen combos, and everything I have is technique specific, so I'm using it. I don't want to be replacing any of that stuff. I want my reels to last me 4 or 5 years, and then I upgrade. Either donate my old stuff or sell it. I prefer to donate it to someone that's going to use it. You know, your junior kids, your high school kids, especially those that can't afford it. pass it on. And sometimes I typically do keep a couple for particular conditions. You know, if I've got friends that don't fish a lot, they can use my older stuff and I don't have to worry about them damaging it or something like that. There's one little guy. Smoked it. Little guys, man, always picking fights. Always the little guys. It's never the guy who's 6'4". It's the little guy. Just let him tire himself out. These are the ones that'll get you, these little buggers. You go to grab them and they shake all crazy, and then you've got a treble hook in your hand. Little guy. It's the future. So locationally, like I said, when the water's cold, your northwest banks, they get the most sunlight, they warm up the quickest. If you get a south breeze, even better. It's blowing warm water in there as well. Here's another bite. They stay out of the northwest and north wind. You don't get as much of that cold wind, which is important. If you've got a good spawning area in that north end or northwest corner, all the better. And then you're going to back off it. You're going to find deep water where it comes in close to the bank and transitions into the flat. And those fish are going to come up vertically in the water column before they move onto the flat typically. The small ones don't mind moving up, but those bigger ones are going to stay deep and suspended on these clear bodies of water on these sunny and a little bit warmer days. And once that water gets into the low 50s, those big ones will start to come shallow, and it's really pre-spawn mode. We're really in late winter right here, not quite pre-spawn yet. But this is that 43, 44 to 50 degrees is really where the jerkbait shines anyway, so we've already caught a limit of keepers. So in a tournament, if I was on a boat, I'd be out deeper. I'd be looking for fish with different baits, trying to get rid of those small keepers. But you're limited on the bank here. With the amount of wind we have blowing up here out of the southeast, that's why we've got some fish up on the flats. If it were calm and cloudy, I don't think these fish would be as shallow or relating to the grass's cover as much. When you've got sun, like we've said before, I think I said it 20 minutes ago, they hold tight to the cover and it helps you narrow them down locationally sooner.